The time is 4:05.
We present now the final program in our series, Musica Australis.
Oranges pulled by my oranges.
A reminiscence of the darling of the golden age of Australian theatre, Nellie Stewart. A quiet colonial avenue, a stone's throw from a glorious Sydney bay, its shores carpeted with bush flowers. And the 20th of November, 1858, saw the birth of one of its most famous citizens. I'm talking of Woolloomooloo Street, long since named Cathedral Street in Woolloomooloo, and the newborn, only another member of a line of distinguished actresses and singers which is active to this very day, Nellie Stewart. To most of us now, only a name, but to the surviving members of her audience, a theatrical experience and an unforgettable memory. Nellie Stewart was destined for the stage. Her mother was a great-granddaughter of Richard and Mary Ann Yates, two thespians celebrated and feted in the London of David Garrick's day. In 1842, Nellie Stewart's mother, then Mrs. Sterling, was brought from Drury Lane by that talented and indefatigable female impresario, Mrs. Clark, in an operatic company to calm and elevate the uncouth provincials of Hobart Town. Called on to display every talent at her fingertips, Mrs. Sterling played in classic tragedy and comedy, in opera burlesque, farce and promenade concerts. She came to Sydney in 1845 as Mrs. Gilbert and quickly established herself as one of the leading operatic and acting delights of the town. It was 13 years after her arrival that Nellie Stewart was born, 111 years ago yesterday. Besides the more conventional schooling, young Nell was nurtured in the theatrical arts by her parents and friends, dancing, fencing and singing. In 1863, at the tender and illegal age of 5, she made her debut in Coppen's Haymarket Theatre as the child in Kotzebue's The Stranger or Misanthropy and Repentance, an often repeated drama of the heavy Teutonic sort then in mode. By 1877, Nellie, who had blossomed somewhat, was playing leading parts in George Darrell's companies. Plays such as Transported for Life, The Zigzag Railway, and that smash hit described as a wonderful Anglo-Australian drama in 5 huge sensations, The Sunny South. This early review work was written specially for the young talents of Nellie and her actress stepsisters Dosey and Maggie. A short trip to India and America resulted, and it was there that George Coppen, the impresario, cabled her to return to Australia for what was to be, in theatrical terms, a break. Although by 1880, when Coppen cabled her, she had already been on the stage for 17 years and was well known to the Melbourne public, it was Coppen who made her a star. The part of principal boy in lush productions with gorgeous, towering sets, transformation scenes, rippling tunes and magical lighting effects was usually a pretty sure path to public popularity. In Nellie Stewart's case, it was a decidedly sure one. At 22, she was alluring in the ostrich plumes and jewel-encrusted tights of a principal boy. Her dimple, her grace of movement, her vitality, and her delightful voice enchanted men and women alike.
Oh,
save me, Nell, save me.
Why, girl, you spill me oranges.
Save me for Roger Fairfax's sake.
Fairfax, back, gentlemen.
Yield her in the king's name.
Ah, the king may rule in Whitehall, but Nell rules in Old Drury.
We only wish to take a kiss. Will you give one for her?
Gladly, my lord. Another? No. You don't like my kisses, eh?
Not those.
They're all I have for you. Now they are gone.
How can I ever thank you?
You owe me no thanks. But tell me, do you know Sir Roger Fairfax? You spoke his name.
Today a letter was brought to me from him. He told me he had been banished from England.
Banished? Sir Roger, banished from England?
He will not leave England until he has seen me.
You must be very dear to him, for him to risk so much to see you. Tell me.
Certain sign of fame for that period, her photograph was to be seen in every barber shop and postcard album. In the late 19th and early 20th century, there was a craze for sending and collecting postcards. The more expensive of these were moulded or padded to reproduce in voluptuous relief the corseted curves of the actresses who were among the favourite subjects. The postcards were tinted, spangled, embossed, stuck with minute bows and rosettes of silk, and were sometimes even scented. Nellie Stewart became one of the postcard favourites with other beauties of the time. Mary Studholme, Zena and Phyllis Dare, Billy Burke, Ada Reeve, Lily Langtry, and Mrs. Brown Potter. The writer Marjorie Skill recounts one of the many anecdotes around Nellie Stewart and her performance in Gilbert and Sullivan.
Nellie had a repertoire of 35 separate prima donna roles and played all the Gilbert and Sullivan leading ladies in Australia. She thought Gilbert was a crabby old thing, but Sullivan and his music were another thing. She made a particularly fetching yum-yum. In Melbourne on 18th December 1886, the new Princess Theatre opened with a performance of The Mikado. The English composer Alfred Cellier conducted. At the rehearsals, he hadn't liked Nellie Stewart's tempo for The Sun Whose Rays. He stopped the orchestra. It would never have done for the Savoy in London. Nellie preferred her tempo. The producer asked Mr. Cellier to hear Miss Stewart through before he decided. Mr. Cellier did. "Right," he said, "it's an improvement."
Hector Bolitho, the royal biographer, at one stage of his career in the 1920s, worked in Australia both as an actor with Alan Wilkie's company and editor of the Shakespearean Quarterly. Hector, what are your first memories of Nellie Stewart?
The first time I saw Nellie Stewart was in Auckland, almost 60 years ago, before the First World War. My memory plays tricks with me now that I'm in my 70s, and I cannot pinpoint the actual date. But it must have been a warm summer day, because I remember her walking in the sunshine, wearing a big round hat. She wore it set on the back of her head, so that it formed a frame for her lovely face. Then I was taken to see her in a play at His Majesty's Theatre. I believe, if my memory isn't playing more tricks, that was Sweet Nell of Old Drury, the character of which is best remembered and ever admired, which she played for the last time when she was nearly 70, quite soon before she died. But then, in Auckland, she was just in her early 50s, a glamorous star, and I was just a boy. Of course, I fell in love with her, which was the romantic duty of all young Australian and New Zealand boys of my generation. I did not realize then that only recently had she made the decision to abandon her career as a singer, for the sad and simple reason that her wonderful soprano voice had begun to fail her. The courage behind this decision, which was her own, reveals the valuable honesty of her life. I repeat that phrase, the valuable honesty of her life. But instead of admitting a defeat, she put all her energy into developing her talents as an actress, and it is an actress that I remember her.
Nellie Stewart was never an actress in the tradition of Ristori, Rachel or Bernhardt. She lacked their grandeur or fury or inspired intensity. She was trained, however, to the finest point in the lore of the stage, and used every artifice to make her natural abilities appear at the best advantage. Adhering to her rule, always be picturesque, even in tatters, she was ever lovely to look at. She worked hard and honestly to burnish and perfect. In earlier parts, her immense vitality had led her into mannerisms. These she learnt to prune until, particularly in scenes of tender emotion and delicate gaiety, her work was a model. Her diction was faultless, her sense of movement and timing never in error, her femininity expressed without cloying sweetness. If, by 1902, Nellie Stewart's singing voice had vanished, the only example that survives of her singing is the sweet call of "Oranges, oranges, who'll buy my oranges," yet her other gifts certainly had not, nor had her courage. It was at J.C. Williamson's Princess Theatre, Melbourne, that Nellie Stewart opened in Paul Kester's play, Sweet Nell of Old Drury. The play was not an immediate success, but presently, as Nell Gwyn, she had captivated the public, and at the age of 44, after having had a career of 39 years, she created the part which will always be associated with her, as other parts have been with other actresses, Sarah Siddons and Lady Macbeth, Vivian Leigh and Scarlett O'Hara, Dame Sybil Thorndike and Joan of Arc. Although she was particularly at home in the insouciant or feminine emotional type, Camille, Zaza and Trilby, it was as Nell Gwyn that she remains enshrined in the hearts of those that both heard and saw her. You and I can listen now as Nellie Stewart, as Nell Gwyn, exchanges banter with the unknown gallant, who is, in fact, King Charles II. The buoyancy, perfect inflection, and enunciation do nothing to betray that she was 72 when she recorded this short scene, previously unplayed before, with Mayne Linton.
Oranges who'll buy my oranges. Here you. Will you buy an orange?
Perhaps. What are they worth?
All I can get.
No doubt. And what is that?
All you will give.
You answer sharply, Nell.
Would you have me blunt?
I'll try again.
Now say a shilling for an orange, won't you? Come on, say... I doubt you only seek to plague me. Why do you keep company with yonder rakes?
Why not?
You have to honest the face.
Yet I warrant you they are both of them the king's friends.
Most likely. But all England knows what company he keeps.
And that?
The worst in London.
A sharp tongue indeed. Have you a lover, Nell?
A lover? Not I. I'd be hanged first.
But someone loves you, Nell.
Loves me. Loves Nell Gwynn. Me name a byword. And me dower? A basket of oranges. Why, what's there to love in me? And what is love but folly?
I remember Nellie Stewart only as an actress, not as a singer. And when I was asked to contribute to this program, I wrote to Alan Wilkie, and he answered me in a letter. The quality that impressed me most was her extraordinary versatility, ranging as it did from grand opera and Shakespeare to modern and costume drama, all with equal success. Her many-sided gifts as an actress included pantomime as well. I remember Arthur Collins, I'm still quoting from Alan Wilkie's letter. I remember Arthur Collins, general manager for many years of the Theatre Royal, Drury Lane in London, saying that she was the finest principal boy he had seen in all his long control of the theatre. She was very devoted to her art and always gave of her best. Very devoted to her art and always gave of her best. How true that was. I was fortunate enough to be in Sydney on that memorable occasion in October 1922 at the Theatre Royal, where Nellie Stewart played the balcony scene from Romeo and Juliet. She was nearly 64 then. She came out of retirement in the name of charity to make the gesture, to play Romeo to her daughter Nancy as Juliet. I can just remember her voice saying, I can remember, saying, but soft, what light through yonder window breaks? It is the east, and Juliet is the sun. Her voice seemed to become younger and younger, and that beautiful scene is wonderful to me still.
The great love of Nellie's life was a fellow thespian, George Musgrove.
They met when she was 22 and he 26, both already successful. Some years later, she travelled to London with him, his mother, and his aunt. She had been in London with her family, presenting their own entertainment before, but now she began an exciting life, playgoing, touring, entertaining, taking singing and dancing lessons, and meeting all the reigning celebrities. Money and success followed, but so did hard times. A few years before the First World War, no longer young, they toured with their company Tasmania, Victoria, and New South Wales. Mainly they played one-night stands, which sometimes made the laundry problem difficult. It had to become a Sunday activity, usually at the rear of some mechanics institute or school of arts. The leading lady, she who for 40 years had basked in the love of the public and met world celebrities and royalty, would turn to the washboard and do her own and George Musgrove's washing. As ever, he did his share by handing the blue bag or stoking the copper.
Perhaps I may just add that I'm recording these few recollections in England, actually in the pavilion at Brighton, which was built by the Prince Regent, later King George IV, for his pleasure. I mention this because it takes us back to the very beginning of Nellie Stewart's story, which she talked to me about on another occasion in Sydney all those years ago. I realized how very much the theatre was in her blood almost, and how she cared for the history of it, when she told me that her great-great-grandmother was the celebrated Mary Ann Yates, who was one of England's greatest tragic actresses in the second half of the 18th century, in the gay old days when the Prince Regent was an ardent patron of the theatre. One critic of that time remarked of Mary Ann Yates that her just elocution, noble manner, warm passion, and majestic deportment had excited the admiration of foreigners and fixed the affection and applause of her own countrymen. Second half of the 18th century. There could be no more true epitaph for her equally celebrated Australian descendant, Nellie Stewart.
When, in 1916, George Musgrove died at their delightful little Mossman cottage, Denagwin, Nellie Stewart was prostrated with grief. The love of her daughter Nancy Stewart helped her through the years until in 1931, on a wintry night at the Mossman Town Hall, where they played the balcony scene from Romeo and Juliet, she strained her heart. She caught a cold, and pleurisy developed. A few weeks later, she died. It was Sunday, the 21st of June. Aware that her end was near, and never forgetful of her public, Nellie Stewart recorded this farewell speech only a few months before her death.
Memory will be my happiness, for you are enshrined there. I have spoken those words in Sweet Nell for more than 1,000 performances, and never without tears in my eyes of gratitude. Yet I would not yield them for a paradise. Laughter, tears, joy, sorrow, all these have played a big part in my life. But it is with tears of joy that I look back on the wonderful affection shown me in so many ways by you, dear friends. We all know that we each have, or should have, an undefinable something, perhaps a compelling willpower, or a giving out of personality, magnetism, or charm. But why is it that one person who is apparently made of the same mixture as a great many others can take possession of your heart, brain, and understanding with almost the first words they utter? What is it that makes one person more than another bring laughter to your lips and the tears catch in your throat at the same time, and you stretch out your hands to them with your heart big and tender and say, "You dear"? The little unloved wife, Maggie Wiley, in Sir James Barrie's clever play, What Every Woman Knows, pathetically tells us that it is charm, a sort of bloom on a woman. If you have it, you don't need to have anything else, not even education. And if you don't have it, it does not much matter what else you have. Some women, the few, have charm for all. Most have charm for one. And some have charm for none. I myself seem to have played such a little part in my humble efforts to please you, to have deserved that pinnacle upon which your wonderful opinion has placed me for so many years. And I am oh so very grateful, my dear, dear public. My endeavor always is to try and radiate some of the love, esteem, and affection which you have given me all my life. For it isn't the things you do that matters, it's the things that you leave undone that gives a great big heartache. And when I am no longer with you, I want you to think of me as just withdrawn into the dimness. Yours still, you mine. Remember only the best of our past moments, and forget the rest. And so, to where I wait, come gently on. Always the same, Nellie Stewart.
The voice of Nellie Stewart. And it ended the short reminiscence of the great Australian singer and actress, darling of the Australian stage. Contributors to this program were Marjorie Skill and Hector Belitho, and yours truly, Terry Torpy. That was the final program in our series Musica Australis, a history of music in Australia.